So this topic is environmental management system, right? So this is one of the last topics in environmental studies, right? There is one small topic that I might take as a live class. We will see that how it goes. Okay. So environmental management system, what is it all about? Okay, what is the cycles which is taken into consideration in environmental management system? We'll see here. So what is environmental management system? It is a set of methods and procedures for aligning corporate strategies, policies and operations with principles that protect the ecosystem. So EMS, it has a ISO standard, right? So it has to protect the ecosystem while any uh, corporate companies will do any projects or policies, etc. So that standard is nothing but ISO 14001. So what is the aim of EMS? It is to increase the compliance. Compliance means maintaining the minimal legal standards so that it will not come into any legal hazards. Also to reduce waste, right? So that we can reduce the environmental impact, right? Also in order to study the environmental impact we have EIA, right? EIA you have studied it in the last week's class. So in September 1996, standardization published the first edition of ISO 14001, right? That is the EMS standard, describing specific requirements, that is what has to be done, the things which are important in the published book or the code book. The second edition of ISO 14001 was published in 2004. Right, this is the dominant environmental management system in the world. Okay, the EMS ISO 14001, it is one of the internationally recognized standards. EMS model or PDCA, what do you mean by PDCA? Plan, do, check and act. Okay, EMS model can also be said as PDCA model. So one of the elaborated cycle or PDCA model, we have plan, right, implement, checking and act, and it becomes as a policy, right here. So these parts wherever is present, the act and the policy is the act part, the policy and the planning is the planning part, implementation is the do part, and checking is the check part. So what do you mean by plan? It is to identify the environmental aspects of a project which is coming in. Example, what are the air pollutants? Determine most important to the company, right? What is the most important thing for a company? For example, just an example, workers' health and safety could be the most important to the company. Legal and other requirements could be one of the main objective which could be seen in the plan. Objectives and targets, right? Like overall goal, minimizing use target, right? Minimize the by 10% of the specific date, that is the pollution which they are talking about. Management action to support objectives and targets. Coming to the do part, the structure, right, how it could be done, training and awareness about the EMS, communication, documentation of the EMS, control of the documents, whether the proof which has taken is proper or not, operational control, emergency preparedness and response has also been done. Finally, or before final, that is next is act is there. Before that we have to check the documentation, that is monitoring and measurement, non-conformance, collective and preventive actions and records. Act, we can see that as EMS audits could be done, review from the management, so the final review stage creates an loop of continuous improvement to the company. So whatever the main checkings or the comments has been written, that would become as a policy, right? Again, according to that, planning has to be done, implementation, checking, act, all those things has to be done. So because of that, there is a continuous loop. Okay. So environmental system mainly comes in air pollution control programs, water pollution control programs, waste management programs, workplace environmental health programs, other environmental program management. So what is the general benefits of an EMS? It drives sustained performance so that we can reach sustainable development, sets targets to reduce the energy use, water use, waste to landfill, achieves cost saving. Also, it is easier for compliance because there is less legal uh, activities which could breach in. Pollution could be prevented, right? Increased efficiency and improved morale or ethics. So we'll just look at the case study why Travis Perkins was forced, or it started to choose EMS. So supplying building material to trade for what is Travis Perkins or TP? It was a building material company or which supplies building material, and it is supplying for the UK for past 200 years. So as you can see, it is one of the UK's largest supplier for the building and construction industry. It has provided more than lakhs of products, right? So Travis Perkins fully integrated to sustainable business. So why actually Travis Perkins needed an EMS? Basically for the legal requirements, right? Because of the financial pressures, market pressures and social pressures. So legal requirements was like environmental protection laws, pollution prevention and control regulations, regulation for specific waste, mainly the toxic waste, also Water Resource Act. The financial pressures from the British is one of the highest or toughest environmental regulations. We have, or they have, landfill tax, the carbon tax. Also there was a pressure from the market. Companies will buy only from the suppliers which has ISO standards of 14001. Customers insisted that timber comes from sustainable sources, questioning the company's environmental approach. So however, we should not cut many trees for timber, right? So even the public had started to ask the questions. There was social pressure, that is license to operate. The company must maintain a public reputation because it had been supplying for more than 200 years. So however, they had implemented, or before implementation of any standard, they had to see which is internationally recognized. So they choose EMS. So TP choose ISO 14001 as its environmental management system. So ISO 14001 is one of the highly reputed environmental management system, and it is internationally recognized. Also, it involves regular and independent audits. Also, here as you can see, there are many linked components of 14001, right? Register of legislation, register of environmental aspects, which is connected to environmental policy. Environmental policy is again connected to environmental management procedure, environmental operating procedure, environmental improvement plans. So all those makes an action list and responsibility. So because of that action we need to perform, there is training material and it has to be indicated by the performance. So finally, Travis Perkins environmental policy set out companies' commitment to comply with the legislation or the law all the time, prevent pollution as far as possible, and seek continuous improvement. Right. So mainly they concentrated upon the water use, energy use, product buying, water discharge, waste management, air emission, land management, noise order, and vehicle impacts. So environmental improvement plan mainly takes into consideration are CO2 emission. What is the CO2 emission coming from the industry? Electricity used, vehicle emission, storage and use of oil, use of diesel, petrol, gas, discharge of waste into drain, amount of water used, storage of use of timber, treatment chemicals, purchase and sale of products. Action list and responsibility which could be taken care of are observing all relevant legislation, seeking to prevent pollution and looking ways to make continuous improvement. Also, internal and external communication. Basically, a successful EMS depends on good communication based on everyone taking responsibility for environmental management. Everyone has to, or every employee has to see the training video. Internal newsletter should be there. Environmental policy should be displayed in the work areas. Mainly, while coming or taking the topic of waste, what we have to do is keep hazardous waste separate from general waste. Obviously it is common sense. Break down boxes before putting in the waste container. What we should not do is, in a company, leave the empty chemical containers in the open. Put oil or oil contaminated waste in the general waste container. So mainly cost and benefits of EMS. What will happen if EMS is implemented? The benefits are achieved through number of cost reductions, right? Nature and environment in general are also the clear winners because the pollution will be decreased. So it's a business procedure that has been redesigned, right? So prevention of waste should be there. Reduce the waste, right? If not, we need to reduce the waste, or if not, we need to reuse the waste. If not, or we could recover the waste. So all these things has to be taken into consideration. So conclusion, what we can say is an environmental management system takes time and commitment for the entire organization to comply with all the rules and regulation of the ISO standards. But effective EMS will provide ongoing environmental benefits, cost saving, contribute to build an attractive workplace culture. So that is all about EMS.